In the vast expanse of the Western Plains, the Wilson Ranch stretched far and wide, a tapestry of golden grass, dusty trails, and endless skies. The Wilson family had worked this land for generations, carving out a life from the rugged earth, but the current Wilson heir, Samuel, was unlike any cowboy the West had known. Samuel was quiet, almost painfully shy. He had inherited his father's ranch, his father's gentle eyes, and his father's stubbornness, but not his flair for conversation. Samuel rarely spoke more than a few words to the townsfolk. He preferred the company of horses, the rhythm of the land, and the solitude of the wide open. At 28, Samuel was the last of the Wilson line, and the ranch needed more than a quiet caretaker. It needed a partner, someone who could help run the household, share the responsibilities, and bring warmth into the isolated life he led. His mother, Martha, who had raised him with unwavering love and quiet strength, worried for his loneliness. "Sam," she said one evening, as they sat by the fire, "you need someone by your side. You can't live alone forever." Samuel shifted uncomfortably but didn't argue. He knew she was right. But the thought of courting in the local town filled him with dread. He didn't have the words, the confidence, or the ease to talk to anyone beyond a nod and a smile. Martha, ever practical, had a plan. "We'll write to the marriage bureau. They can find you a bride, someone willing to start a new life here. You don't have to say much. Just meet her." Samuel was hesitant, but the promise of companionship was too tempting to refuse. So, with a few brief letters exchanged, arrangements were made for a woman from back east to come out west to the Wilson Ranch. Samuel imagined someone gentle, shy, perhaps, someone who could understand his quiet nature. He waited at the train station one crisp autumn morning, his heart beating a little faster than usual. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm glow over the dusty platform. He adjusted his hat nervously, staring down the tracks for the first glimpse of the woman who would change his life. The train pulled in. Steam hissing, wheels clattering. One by one, passengers began to disembark, a mix of farmers, travelers, and workers heading west for new opportunities. And then she appeared. She wasn't what Samuel expected. Instead of a delicate, shy woman, the first to step off was tall, with a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over striking dark eyes, her hair tied back in a loose braid. She wore sturdy boots, a dusty coat, and carried a confident air that made Samuel's heart skip. For a moment, neither spoke. Samuel's eyes widened. This woman, this stranger, stood looking right at him, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. "Are you Samuel Wilson?" she asked, voice steady and clear. He nodded, still unsure if this was really his bride. "My name's Clara," she said. "Looks like I'm your bride." Samuel blinked. This wasn't the quiet, gentle woman he'd imagined. But as he looked at her steady gaze and the way she held herself, he felt something unfamiliar stir inside, a spark of curiosity, maybe even hope. They climbed into the wagon, heading back to the ranch, the sun climbing higher in the sky. Clara glanced out at the endless fields, then back at Samuel. "So?" she said, breaking the silence. "Tell me about this place." Samuel hesitated, then found his voice. "It's home," and for the first time in a long while, the quiet cowboy felt that maybe, just maybe, home might mean more than just land and loneliness. The Wilson Ranch lay sprawled beneath the endless sky, the heart of a life built on patience, grit, and endless work. As the wagon rolled over familiar dirt paths leading home, Clara looked around with a mix of curiosity and quiet determination. Samuel, sitting beside her, was still the shy man she had glimpsed at the station, reserved, guarded, and a little unsure how to interact with this woman who had just stepped into his world. But beneath that quiet surface, she sensed a gentle soul, someone who treasured the land like she did. When they reached the homestead, Martha was waiting on the porch, her warm smile instantly putting Clara at ease. The house was modest but sturdy, with wind-sculpted wood and windows that caught the sunset just right. "We'll make a home of it," Martha said softly, stepping forward to embrace Clara. "You're welcome here." That evening, around the dinner table, the awkwardness slowly melted away. Clara listened as Samuel shared stories about the land, the cattle, the seasons. Though his words were few, there was a quiet pride in how he spoke about the ranch. "Grew up here," Samuel said, "but it's been lonely since my PA passed. I never thought I'd meet someone like you." Clara smiled, her eyes reflecting the soft light of the lantern. "Well, I'm not exactly the kind of woman your PA might have expected either." She told them about her life in a small town in the east, about how she had always been restless, dreaming of something bigger than the quiet streets she knew. The idea of a new start out west had been a gamble, but something about the letter from the marriage bureau intrigued her. "I wasn't sure I'd like it here," she admitted, "but this place, it's got a spirit. I think I want to be part of it." Samuel's gaze lingered on her with newfound respect. She was strong, independent, and unafraid to face the unknown. And yet, there was something tender in her voice that stirred something inside him. Over the next days, Clara proved she was no ordinary bride. She threw herself into ranch chores, learning to saddle horses, mend fences, and help with the cattle. Samuel watched her from a distance, impressed by her determination and quick learning. One afternoon, as they worked side by side, repairing a fence that had been battered by a recent storm, Clara wiped the sweat from her brow and looked over at Samuel. "You know," she said with a smirk, "you don't have to do everything yourself. Let me help." Samuel's cheeks colored. "I'm used to working alone." "Well," Clara said, "maybe it's time you got used to having someone beside you." Their hands brushed as they passed tools back and forth, a small connection sparking between them. Neither spoke of it, but the moment hung in the air like a promise. That evening, Clara and Samuel sat outside watching the stars emerge one by one. The silence between them was comfortable now, a language of its own. "You ever think about what comes next?" Clara asked quietly. Samuel shrugged. "I've never been good at thinking that far ahead." Clara turned to look at him. "Maybe, you don't have to." The days grew into weeks, and with each passing one, Clara's presence began to fill the Wilson ranch in ways Samuel hadn't expected. She was a partner, a friend, and slowly, something more. Yet, beneath the budding warmth, both were aware of the challenges ahead. This was a life far from easy, filled with hard work, unpredictable weather, and the weight of loneliness that often came with the land. But for the first time, Samuel felt ready to face those challenges, not alone, with Clara. And Clara, too, felt that this rugged place might just be the home she had been searching for all along. Autumn deepened over the Wilson ranch, painting the plains with fiery reds and golds. The days grew shorter, and the chill in the air hinted that winter was on its way. Clara and Samuel had settled into a rhythm, their companionship growing stronger with each sunrise. Though Samuel remained quiet, Clara found that his silence was not emptiness but a calm strength. He listened more than he spoke, but when he did talk, his words carried a weight of sincerity. Slowly, Samuel began to open up, sharing memories of his father and stories about the land that had shaped him. One evening, as the wind howled outside, they sat by the fire, the warm glow casting dancing shadows on the walls. Clara looked across at Samuel, who was quietly mending a worn leather saddle. "You ever miss the East?" Samuel asked suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. Clara paused, considering. "Sometimes, but this land, it feels like home now." He nodded thoughtfully. "Pa used to say the land takes care of those who take care of it. Sometimes it's hard to believe, especially when the weather turns." As if on cue, the wind outside picked up, and the first snowflakes of the season began to fall. Winter on the plains was harsh and unpredictable. The ranchers relied on each other and their grit to get through the cold months, and Clara knew they had to prepare. The following morning, Clara woke to a blanket of white covering the fields. The horses stamped their feet, eager for fresh hay. Samuel was already up, bundling firewood and checking the fences. Together, they worked side by side, braving the cold wind as they secured the animals and stocked the barn. Clara admired Samuel's quiet resilience, the way he moved with steady purpose despite the biting chill. Days passed, and the snow fell heavier. The ranch was silent except for the occasional creak of the barn and the soft calls of the animals. Inside the house, the fire burned low, and Clara and Samuel found comfort in each other's company. One evening, a fierce storm rolled in, shaking the windows and howling like a wild beast. The power flickered and went out, plunging the house into darkness. Samuel grabbed a lantern, lighting the small room with a flickering glow. Clara sat close, her fingers entwined with his. "We'll get through this," Samuel said, voice steady, but low. Clara nodded, her heart swelling with a fierce tenderness. Together, outside, the storm raged, but inside the little house on the plains, a different kind of warmth blossomed, one born of shared hardship, trust, and quiet love. As the storm finally passed and the dawn broke, the ranch was blanketed in pristine white. The world outside looked new, fresh with possibility. Samuel stepped outside, breathing in the crisp air. Clara joined him, wrapping a thick coat around her shoulders. They stood side by side, looking out over the land that had tested them but never broken them. "Thank you for coming here," Samuel said softly. Clara smiled, squeezing his hand. "Thank you for letting me." In that moment, beneath the vast winter sky, the shy cowboy and the unexpected bride found something neither had anticipated. Winter's grip slowly loosened, and the Wilson ranch began to thaw beneath the early spring sun. Melting snow fed the thirsty earth, and green shoots bravely pushed their way through the thawed soil. The land, much like Samuel and Clara, was waking up again, ready to grow, to bloom, and to hold fast. Samuel had always known this land was his legacy, but now, with Clara by his side, the ranch felt like more than just a duty or an inheritance. It was becoming a home. Mornings were no longer solitary. The quiet of dawn was shared with Clara's laughter, light and bright as birdsong. Samuel found himself looking forward to the small moments, a shared cup of coffee, the easy silence on a morning ride, the way Clara's eyes lit up when she spoke of plans for the garden she wanted to plant. Martha noticed the change in her son. Where once there had been a hesitance, a cautious reserve, there was now a steady warmth. The shy cowboy was blossoming in a way she'd long hoped for. One afternoon, as the two worked the fields together, Clara paused to brush her hands through the freshly turned earth. "I want to plant roses here," she said, eyes sparkling. "A patch of wild roses. Something bright to remind us there's beauty even in the hard work." Samuel smiled softly. "Roses in the West. I like that." Their hands met briefly over the soil, fingers lingering like a secret promise. The days grew longer, and the rhythm of ranch life settled into a comfortable pattern. They faced challenges: the stubborn mule that refused to be saddled, the fences that needed mending after a spring rainstorm, the unpredictable weather that demanded constant attention. But with each trial, Clara and Samuel leaned on each other more. They learned to speak a language beyond words: a glance, a touch, a shared breath. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, Samuel led Clara to the spot she had chosen for her garden. "Let's plant those roses," he said quietly. Clara's eyes shone with gratitude and something deeper: love that had grown slowly, steady as the seasons. As they worked side by side, planting the first rose bushes, Samuel felt the weight of his shyness lifting. He was learning to open not just his mouth, but his heart. That night, under a sky full of stars, they sat together on the porch, the scent of earth and roses filling the air. "You've changed this place," Samuel said, voice filled with wonder. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. "You changed me, too." They sat in comfortable silence, two souls intertwined like the roots beneath the roses, growing stronger with every day. And as the Wilson ranch stood proud against the horizon, it was no longer just land and fences. It was a home built on hope, love, and the quiet courage of two unlikely partners. Spring had settled fully over the Wilson ranch, bringing with it a promise of renewal and fresh starts. The roses Clara had planted bloomed in vibrant hues: soft pinks, deep reds, and cheerful yellows, standing as a testament to the life they had built together. Samuel stood on the porch one morning, watching Clara tend to the garden with the ease and confidence she had grown into. The shy cowboy who once dreaded conversation now spoke freely, his eyes bright with warmth and joy. It hadn't been an easy journey. There were days filled with doubt, when Samuel's quiet nature felt like a barrier too high to climb. Clara, too, had faced her fears: the uncertainty of a new land, the hard work of a rancher's life, and the vulnerability of opening her heart to someone so different from herself. But together, they had found something rare and precious: partnership. One afternoon, the town's annual spring fair came to the small western settlement. Samuel and Clara attended, a novelty to the townsfolk who had watched the shy cowboy grow more at ease over the months. Clara's laughter echoed as they tried their hand at games, and Samuel's quiet smile never left his face. At the edge of the fair, under a big oak tree, Samuel took Clara's hand in his gentle pressure that spoke volumes. "Clara," he began, his voice steady despite the nervous flutter in his chest, "I never thought I'd find someone like you. You came here when I was afraid of everything, and you stayed." Clara's eyes filled with tears, and she squeezed his hand. "I stayed because this is where I belong, right here with you." Samuel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple ring, something he had saved for months. "Will you marry me, Clara? Not because I was sent to find a bride, but because I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks as she nodded, unable to find the words but speaking volumes with her smile. they sealed their promise with a kiss beneath the wide sky, surrounded by blooming roses and the gentle whispers of the prairie wind. That evening, back at the ranch, Martha watched the two with a proud smile. The shy cowboy she had worried for was no longer alone. He had found love unexpected, strong, and true. As the stars twinkled overhead, Samuel and Clara stood on the porch, hand in hand, looking out over the land that had brought them together. The Wilson Ranch was no longer just a piece of earth under the endless sky. It was a home, a sanctuary, and the beginning of a new chapter, one written in courage, love, and the promise of forever.